eloquence. Thank you, Nadim. So I'd just say everything that Nadim said. Okay, thank you very much. No, I'm going to try to. Yeah. Oh shoot! It was going so well until the last second.
You don't know your own strengths.
Yeah, and Nadim was getting ready to help me, and I've got this Midwestern I can do it myself kind of thing. That's right. So I mean, some of you may be familiar with me and my work. Many of you, perhaps not. Some of you have looked me up, I think, in the last few days online. I am going to give you a short version of a very long story, and the story is that I was a young man, not so young anymore. And I grew up in an all-white town in Wisconsin, but had remarkable parents who had a larger vision of the world and exposed me to the world in a big way. Actually, at age 16, my father took me to Haiti, which was a transformative experience for a young man. And I've continued going back to Haiti, and have also written a book about that country and my times there, prompted by the earthquake of 2010. That project and my writing about Pakistan really are part of the same larger project, which is to bring to American readers the human experience of other countries that Americans otherwise might not be exposed to, or might see only in a one-dimensional way, or not understand in human terms. Americans, because we live in a very powerful country, we tend to see other countries in terms of how they relate to us, or why should we care about them because we're the important people. And so we care about Haitians in a one-dimensional way because they're poor and we can help them. That's to oversimplify, right? We care about Pakistanis because they're brown and they have beards and they're scary and they blow stuff up. And that's also oversimplifying. But I'm afraid that is part of the problem. I mean, that's the Pakistan that most Americans see on television. So at this point in my life, in my career, I have almost 20 years of personal exposure to Pakistan, and it's because, having been to Haiti at age 16, I wanted more of the world. I went off to live in Bangkok in 1993 and became a journalist. Sort of showed up in Asia and said, I'm an Asia hand now. I want to experience Asia. What a great smorgasbord of experience Asia has been for me. And as part of my Asian experience, that led me to Pakistan. More directly, I was interested in the situation in Kashmir in the mid-90s. And I went on the ground into Indian-held Kashmir several times in 1994 and 95. And then I realized, having done that, and then, of course, having been exposed to the Indian point of view on Kashmir, I felt an obligation and also an interest in learning the Pakistani point of view on Kashmir, and the only proper way to do that was to go to Pakistan. That's a very short version of a very long story, which is more or less summarized in my book, Alive and Well in Pakistan, and the sequel, Overtaken by Events, a Pakistan road trip. But I think the general point is that having done all that, having experienced that world, and then having, as of 2004, spent a decade getting to know Pakistan on a personal level, I wanted to break out of the constraints of just being a news journalist who covered the news, who covered the story, this week's politics. And that's part of the problem when Westerners write about Pakistan is, again, we see it in terms of ourselves, of how it relates to us, especially us Americans. And then we tend to be obsessed with this week's political story or this week's outrage, like the church bombing in Peshawar. That kind of thing overtakes the Americans' attention in regard to Pakistan, and so then the bad stuff gets noticed, and properly so. The bad stuff is very bad. But I wanted to step back from that kind of writing after a decade, and I wanted to write something that would say, there is more to know about Pakistan. There is more of Pakistan to know than this stuff. And yes, those things are real. All the things blowing up, the suicide bombings, everything that we have been living with all this time, they're real. But so is a young family struggling to put vegetables on the table, worrying about the price of rice. So is the cricket match at Gaddafi Stadium that I attended in 2003. What a wonderful experience. I put that in my book. And so I wanted to give a more complete picture. And that was now 10 years ago that book was published. I've been back to Pakistan several times since then. That book, Alive and Well in Pakistan, covers my experiences in the 90s in the first half of the book, beginning in Indian-held Kashmir, and then in the second half of the book, my time spent spending a semester teaching at Beacon House National University in Lahore. So that's the kind of the two halves of that story. But 10 years have passed since then. I've made several trips. I wrote the second book, Overtaken by Events, a Pakistan road trip, to update that story. And now, having done that second book and made several more trips, and then seeing how Pakistan is of enduring interest and should be of enduring interest, and with America about to start withdrawing from Afghanistan next year with unpredictable consequences, I feel a strong desire to reprint my book. And now I have it's a plan to reprint it in spring 2014. And then launch a much more assertive program of bringing the updated version of Alive and Well in Pakistan to the mainstream American public. I have copies of that book that that I hope some of you will go away with today, and also some copies of my other book, Overtaken by Events. And I'll get into the details of on what basis I can part with those copies later, but suffice it to say that I can't sell these copies of Alive and Well at direct retail price, because I have very few copies left, and I need the support of Pakistani communities to get the resources that I need in order to reprint the book and bring it very assertively. I really want to. In America, any community that wants to be heard and wants its interests served in America has to toot its own horn, has to be assertive on its own behalf. So that's the plan that I have for next year. I will pause here, though, because I don't want to start talking business until later, but and I hope that you have some interest in my book and in getting it for yourself and in sharing it and in supporting my reprint project. But having given you some sketch of what I have done and what I intend to do, and the 20 years of my own exposure to Pakistan, perhaps, unless it's time to move on to one of the other speakers, either now or after the other speakers speak, I'm happy to pick up on any questions you might have, things I haven't touched on. There's a lot of ground to cover, of course. And I've really only sketched it very slightly.
We're taking two questions now?
Sure, yeah. That's...
I have one.
Yeah.
So typically, us Pakistanis, right, we have a view of ourselves, right?
Yeah.
And everybody, usually, whenever we have a view of ourselves, we have sort of a blind spot.
Yeah.
Things that we don't know about ourselves, right? That would be of interest to us, but we cannot find out because we're either in the bubble, or we're only talking to Pakistanis,
right,
or the other people we're talking to are so polite that they don't necessarily tell us, you guys suck at this or whatever, So maybe if you can talk about maybe a few of those that we are completely devoid of information.
I'm too polite, though.
Either
yeah.
of ourselves, we're so self-righteous. Oh my God, we are from Pakistan, the land of pure, whatever. Anything like that.
Well, so the gentleman's question is, what are some blind spots that Pakistanis have about themselves that someone like me, an outsider, can see more readily? And that gets really to the purpose of my writing, which is to portray Pakistan and Pakistanis as seen by me to Americans, right? And that's one reason Pakistanis find my books of interest, for exactly that reason. You're sort of seeing yourselves through my eyes. I think Pakistanis are self-righteous, or tend to be, but also at the same time tend to be very self-critical. And I think that self-criticalness is in some ways endearing. Oh, we're so messed up. Oh, it's gone. You know, Nadim actually said, you know, the wheels started coming off when Jinnah died, right? Which I think is very true. But Pakistanis tend to recite that litany of, oh, everything that's wrong with this country. Oh, this country's so messed up. Oh, everything's all, and it's all true. That's part of the problem. But a lot of energy gets spent on that could be spent more constructively. So if we start from the premise that, yes, Pakistan is extremely messed up, okay, now what? You know, what can we do? Whether it's on a public level, trying to sort of, you know, reclaim some kind of public action within Pakistan on the political level or civic level, and I know that's very difficult because of all the complexities and obstacles that are thrown in your way